Dun, 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 dun. Happy Pride, everybody! Oh, so excited. My name is Shahara Ghaznavi. I'm one of your many beautiful hosts for this podcast, Detecting the Marvelous. Alongside me are Dan Rosen and Matt Ardell. Happy Pride. How are you guys doing?
Happy
Woo!
Pride. Good.
Happy Pride, everybody!
Hey, I'm super excited to get into this one because I'm glad something like it exists, especially in the comic world. And it was a fun read. But other than that, how are you guys doing in general? How are your lives? It's been a while. How are you guys doing?
I'm good. I'm good. It's just it's Saturday, so I got up and watched Doctor Who, and that
Of
was
course.
fun. And
Nice.
which I'm sure we'll be discussing, Shahara, before too long. But yeah. So yeah, and I really enjoyed this read as well.
Mhm.
It's got a bit of everything. So yeah, it was terrific.
Yeah, it was great. It was good. There were some very cool surprises in this stuff like stories that I didn't know about. So that'll be great to see as well. And if anyone hears any background noise on my part, my partner and son are making cookies in the kitchen, and so you might hear chocolate chips being thrown everywhere or rainbow sprinkles being thrown in the air. So who knows? Yeah.
Um,
Aw.
I think that we should have a like a cookies made by your son a son party. You
Yeah.
know,
Ooh, that would be great.
I would love that.
He,
And rainbow sprinkles is very in the theme for today. So
that's true. He does love just rainbows in general. Like he's got, I think, 5 or 6 different pairs of rainbow colored socks. So he just
incredible.
loves lots of colors all together, all the colors of the rainbow.
Oh, that's lovely. Well, I'm so glad to hear that. Well, to start off, Matt, where should we start?
Yeah, well, why don't we start at the start? So with Super Pride. So like this is a collection from DC Pride 2021, Batman, Urban Legends 4 to 6, uh 10, and a DC Tim Drake special. So it came out in 2022, and the first story is it's about Superman, John Kent Superman, as opposed to Kal-El
Hmm.
Superman, um, and his relationship with Damien, and his first Pride, as a bisexual superhero. And I thought there's a lot of really lovely banter
Hmm.
between the two of them in this. I mean, it's kind of just really as much a monologue about his raison d'être as anything else, and it kind of shows. Is funny. I don't know about you, but it showed how much Damien was like his dad more than anything
Yeah.
else in there. It's
Yeah.
like, I've got like stun bombs and electric nets and this. And he's like, we're going to celebrate Pride. It's like, yeah, but what if jerks attack?
Yeah.
kind
Yeah.
of thing.
He's ready at every angle. Yeah, with like all the like, it's like his heart's in the right place. It's just violently in the right place.
Yes, yeah.
It's like
um,
we're gonna protect everyone, and everyone's gonna have a good time, but I'm gonna make sure of it. And
yeah.
we're like, okay, but it's also fun. Like it was really
Yeah.
really cute in that
Yeah,
way.
for sure. So it's nice. And also, I think it's a great way to start off this anthology because it is talking about someone with power speaking out and so on. And I mean, there's like things like conversations I've had either with, like family members or whoever who have said stuff like, oh, why do celebrities always have to make a big thing about coming out or whatever? And part of the reason it is like using their platform, like Elliot Page coming out, who, beloved by, his fans and stuff like that. So, at each, and he's had like several stages of coming out, I would say, but that doing so really does help people be like, oh, okay, well, this person we love, and we've seen in lots of movies that we like, nominated for Oscars and stuff. That's, that person represents us. And I think that in that way, and at the same time, for me, someone who is, cis het, all the like, normative things, being like, oh, like, all right, well, this, from my perspective, from the cis het white community perspective, being like, oh, like, cool, like, so this, performer who we all admire and we've loved and maybe even had crushes on, they're also part of this community. And so, that's great to see that too. So I think, I think the message is a great way to kick off this anthology.
Very, very well put. I think that when he was gifted the cape and he turned it around and it had pride flags on it, that was very clear. It's like, yeah, I didn't think I wanted to come to Pride as Superman, and understanding. I think that it's not lost on him the responsibility that carries. Um, and it was a really, I don't know, I really connected to how much he took that into consideration, and that he did end up showing up to Pride, and it's kind of nice to know that your heroes support you, like at the same time as like celebrities coming out. It's like celebrities that are maybe cis and het and support the community and do what they can to, right, that means a lot as well, like that allyship as well. Of course this is an allyship, like of course he's part of the community, but it makes me recognize that even allyship is really important as well.
Yeah. And I think that was the having Damien as an important part of the story too, was because that was showing his allyship and his support,
His
even
violent
when it is
allyship.
exceptionally violent, and and I just love it. Starts with him going like, "I had a plan."
Yeah.
Because like God just sweeps in and takes care of everything.
But what
Um,
I would say, what's nice is like it's never a question of like, oh, going to Pride or whatever. Like it's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna be there for Pride, but like I'm gonna have my stun gun ready and I'm gonna have my blasters and like
yeah,
yeah, like
yeah. And it's the conclude the sort of the final bit where Damien is like, "No, your father would be happy because it's you being you,"
mm,
Yeah.
uh, which is a lovely message. And then Superman or John Kent creating the rainbow using his
yeah.
heat vision, and it's like Damien like it's like, "Yeah, it's pretty, but it's just science. I could do that." Just so Damien. Uh,
Yeah.
well, next story is Confessions. That brings us to Tale of Nubia, who at the time of the release of this story, she was the queen of the Amazonians.
Have the
And
Amazonians been associated with Pride before? No, no, I'm kidding.
it's one of those funny things where it's like they for the longest time DC dodged around like the implications. It's like, how? I mean, literally the comic was written by a guy who based it on Betty Page and was in a polyamorous relationship with two other women and was really into bondage. Like come on, okay, like just embrace it.
Yeah.
Embrace it. You know?
Alongside the fact that they live in a society that's all women, right? Like,
Yeah.
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 Yeah, you just think they're gonna like sit around and knit every night, you know? Like
Yeah.
it's just like, oh, time to go to bed, get my knitting.
They're just waiting for a World War II pilot to crash land on their island.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. All it took is one man and all their sexuality awoken.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but so the the thing with the Amazonians is a group of characters. Aside from Diana, a lot of them are very dour. So this story sort of like injected a little bit of joy
Mm.
into like the representation of the Amazonians, with Nubia and Barda, Big Barda,
Mhm.
teaming up to wrestle to raise money for a women's shelter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
against Giganta and another woman. But it was just a fun, it is like just a little aside where it just gave a little bit of depth,
Mhm.
and and showed that like her relationship with her wife Fausta, who's like a smith for the Amazonians. It gave it a little bit of texture and loveliness there, because it was just like they were teasing each other, and it just was nice relationship depth.
Yeah.
Do you mind if I ask a question? It's because this is an old comic, but then the top and tail looks like a modern design. So was it like they put the old comic in context with newer drawn work, or was it always this way?
Well, I mean, Nubia. So I mean, this is 3 4 years old. Some of these stories, well,
Yeah.
about 3 years old. I think some of the older stories. So they're not that old.
But maybe just older style, like art style, perhaps, or
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, maybe. And I think they did try to have a sort of a variety of styles for
Hmm.
the different stories.
It reminds me
Um,
of, and this is something that maybe we can cover for another Pride Month or something. But there was this compilation called "Love Is Love" that was also done by different artists, and I don't even think it was just DC artists. There was a mix of DC and Marvel, but it was basically to raise funds for victims of the Orlando Pulse shooting, and so a lot of it
Okay.
was more reflections specifically on that. Um, it was something I just like come across. It was just sitting in the comic book section of my local library. And so I like go, but it had like a lot of these different sort of compilations. Although that one is definitely a lot heavier, whereas this one, you've got the Superman statement in the first one, but then this is just kind of like a fun celebration where, like, it's more just about the love than about like making a statement. I felt,
Yeah.
mhm.
yeah, and being fun and playful and.
So what did you guys think of? I mean, I thought it was you know Nubia versus Giganta, and she just gets pissed off when she starts losing. I thought it was a fun little story, and that's the thing. All of these stories are like for the most part, like 5 10 pages tops.
Hmm.
They're all just very quick and to the point, but just showing like these brief experiences. So, what did you think of this one?
Right.
Yeah, I thought that this one was really fun. I kind of like how she kind of got roped into it because it was like, yeah, like it will sell and it'll be good for the shelter and I think that when it got a little bit too real, like I was like, yeah, of course it did. It was very very funny. And I connected with this one a lot just because it felt very like women in power and the relationships, like each of them bounced off of each other really well. It was really
Mhm.
well written and it was exciting. Like there was a lot conveyed in only, let's see, one, two, three, four, five pages.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I felt like
Yeah,
I got like a real, like a whole, because didn't know these characters, but I felt like I got a whole backstory from all of them, which was really great. Uh,
absolutely.
yeah.
What did you think, Dan?
Oh yeah, yeah. No, like I thought, yeah, like I thought it was super fun. I thought it was really playful, like, and like the way you get the fact that there is like this rich history between these characters, and that they've all got this great
Mhm.
relationship, and like I said, like it's it reminded me of even like the writing of like the pilot of The Wire, where you're introducing these characters to, at least to me, but like you've already got this rich backstory in the background between them. Like they've all got these different intricate relationships and friendships of different levels and like intimacies, which I thought was really cool. And to do that, like you said, in just 5 pages, that's
5 pages.
awesome.
Yeah. Cool. Well, the next story that brings us to Think of Me. This is another friend of Damien. Like Damien is the super ally of the DC universe, it would seem. Um, so this is Connor Hawk, the son of the Green Arrow, and versus what seems to be evil Elton John. I think
Yeah.
in the comic.
That's immediately what I thought of.
Um,
I was like, oh, hell,
like
John,
he's got a
no.
little gapped tooth, the like
Like
pompadour,
the
kind of
Yeah,
glasses.
I
red
Yeah.
guess like
pompadour.
slightly David Bowie-ish in the
Hmm.
hairstyle, but I think Elton John is a little closer to what that is at the beginning.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, so it's like him doing what he does, but it's framed in the context of him writing a letter to his estranged mother, Sandra Moonday Hawk. It's it's interesting because it's all based around like the villain he's fighting. His powers, the Music Meister. Their powers based around using music to mind control. So he's got these earplugs, but it's talking about like it's an interesting perspective because it's talking about how his dad is trying to be supportive but just doesn't really get him. And this is, I mean, a lot of people talk about, gay and lesbian and trans, but like there's a spectrum, and this is he's asexual. So this is him coming out to his mom via this letter, or trying to, and he keeps writing it and throwing it away because he doesn't feel it, coming out as asexual. And again, Damien is like, hey, I know it's hard. Maybe this is something you just need to say to her instead of in a letter. And again, just being the supportive ally buddy that he is. So it seems like he's like the super friend to all of the gay characters and bi characters and
Yeah.
asexual characters of the DC universe. But I thought it was really fun. It was um, almost entire, like there's no text in the actual moment except for when Damien's talking. It's all like done through the narration of the letter, which I thought was a neat technique.
Mm-hmm.
What did you guys think?
Here, you go ahead, Shahar, first.
I I really loved this one. It felt gorgeously internal in the fact that yeah, it felt like, and a lot of these felt like a monologue. Um Especially framed in this letter. And we didn't know what he was necessarily talking about until like maybe the last two pages. But as we were reading, there's a lot that I related to. In the especially like society is composed of celebrations of like sexual aspect of love, and I've talked a lot to my friends about the fact that like sexuality, um, when people frame sexuality, they normally frame it in sex, which is not always my favorite thing. And like I like to consider myself a little bit asexual at least. It's something that I like haven't claimed yet, but I'm like, you know what? That like everything that he said, I really connected with. Um, and the fact that he's doing so and trying to frame what that was for him and the context in his life felt very relatable. And when he proudly says it at the end, in this letter, it felt like a gorgeous moment. But it's framed in this really cool music battle that they're having. So he's still kicking ass while also having this revelation. Yeah, to his estranged mother, but also to himself. And I think he's still trying to figure out how he wants to frame it in the same way that I want to figure out how to frame it within my life. So that was really, so this one specifically was very relatable to me.
All right. So I mean, it's great because yeah, like it's stuff that like necessarily like as me as someone who like I always try to be supportive, but I don't like that kind of um either like identity or relationship wouldn't be necessarily on my immediate radar. So it's nice to hear that um yeah from you. And I'll just add that I also really liked the storytelling aspect where there's a parallel between his actual battle, like the physical battle, and also like the internal struggle within the writing the letter as well. And I thought that was done executed very well.
Yeah. And I mean, I felt it was nice that they, didn't where they positioned it in the story too is fairly upfront. Um, so because a lot of people are only becoming more aware that there is a spectrum
Mm-hmm.
of sexuality, and it's not, and some people, and it's important to recognize these other groups that people are not maybe as ready to sort of like see, like not that they're not ready, but just it's you know not out there on a float her waving a flag to somebody who's like, "This is me." I have a lot of friends who sort of fall under like the asexual kind of portion of the spectrum, and they're just like they don't how do we use this? They find will often talk about how it feels like they're forced to express things in a particular way that they don't want to, and it's good for a mainstream publication to bring forward these other experiences in a way that's not necessarily
For sure. I think because a lot of the time when I do see like queer representation, it is still almost within a binary perspective of either like lesbian, gay, maybe bisexual, and even like bisexual will be like the most spectrumy thing they might show. So to see these other aspects of the spectrum, yeah, is good, and it's new, and also it's, yeah, like I mean, like you said, Shahara, like very important.
Thanks.
that bring so next up at bat is up at bat. So
Oh,
this is written by
I love this one.
Jadzia Axelrod, a trans woman, and stars Alicia Yo, Batgirl's college roommate, and a trans woman of color. Alicia was created by Gail Simone and was intended to be a temporary fill-in for Batgirl while she was injured. This is which never really happened. So this story is kind of making good on that promise, and it's just it's a cute little aside. Again, it's another one of those like 5-6 page stories. Um, and Alicia is a trans rights activist, which is reflective of the experiences of Jadzia, the writer. And it's this activism that if fighting the new fight that rings through, I find in this story, and is using superheroes as an allegory for the experiences of activists and trans people. So it's like
Mhm.
basically, you have Batgirl comes to her wounded, needs help, and she just gets her to the belfry, and then uses her bat to take down Mothman, and it's
Mhm.
like, again, the entire thing is like, I don't have to fight the same fights over and over. I can fight on my own terms, which is a nice statement. You don't have to repeat the past. You can create your own future. So, what did you guys think of it, Dan? How were your thoughts on
I mean, this one was maybe one of my favorites of the whole thing. I thought it was really cool. It does. I mean, it reminds me of a sort of like social media friend who is a friend of a friend, but like a trans activist, and seeing the things that she has gone through. This story really reminded me of her, um, and I also love how it is actually very visceral and violent, and feeling like it is but for like a purpose, because it is it's also not like I'm gonna go and crush bad guys. It is like I am here to like defend myself, defend my friend. And I thought, like, there's times where the violence is very self-indulgent, I find, in some comics, and here it is very purposeful, and there's very much a reason for like how badly injured Batgirl is, and then how much Alicia like gets into it, because she is really like, it is like a fighting for her life scenario. And that metaphor, I think, does really translate to what trans people have been going through these days.
Shahara?
Yeah, very very well put down. I think that this again, same here. It was one of my favorites, if not maybe my favorite. Like I think I could honestly say that I loved Alicia. I thought that she was so powerful, and
Hmm.
but also read as like kind of an everyday sort of person as
Yeah,
well.
absolutely.
And that made her very easy to connect to, because like we start off and she's just a person. She has like her monologue, but then Batgirl shows up at her door, and I liked that she could read. Like she could read I don't know if it's that she could read people very well, or she could just read Batgirl very well. Even like that mask doesn't hide as much as you think.
Right.
Um,
Yes.
Yeah.
Excellent line. Yeah.
Right? So good. And that relationship between them for me is very captivating. And I love it. And she's so intelligent. Like even
Mm.
the fact that she like picks up on the tracking device and she's ready and she cracks open the glass and takes on the persona of Batgirl.
Hmm.
And with her own like trans flag bat,
Yeah,
which
trans
is
bat.
it's quite incredible. And I think it showed an incredible strength that women and trans women have. Um, and because you know, like there's so much debate of, especially around sports, about like you know trans women and what they can and can't do, and it was nice to just see her kick this guy's ass. It was really really good.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
it was yeah, it was very powerful. Again, yeah, like you said, very visceral, but it was done in a very powerful way. And I'm excited. It was like it made me want to read more comics with these two and with Alicia and
Yeah,
see
like
what.
to like a read like a 6 part series or something like that that would have her like perspective, or because I like hearing also like when stories go into um like it shows like the side characters, not just like the superheroes but the people who are almost like the sidekicks or like the
Mhm.
friends of the superheroes, and like you said, like just a very instantly relatable character. Like I'm not a trans woman, but just her personality and her being that regular person who has to step up, I find is very relatable. It's why we like those movies with like Johnny Everyman, who then all of a sudden gets thrust into the situation, in that sense.
Yeah,
Alicia
Right.
Every person who has to all of a sudden fight off Mothman.
absolutely. It's not like she was born to be a hero, but she took that on because she has that within her, and
Yeah.
it anybody, any one of us can be a superhero, and I really do love that. As long as you, I don't know, you have the drive and the wanting to protect others, you know. So I think that she has that wholeheartedly.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
And that brings us a world kept just for me. So this is, I actually came to this. I guess he was Aqualad when I first met him through Young Justice. That's when I first met this character. But it's the story of Jackson Hyde, the second Aquaman, and his lover Hoea, a Zebellian, which is an offshoot of Atlantean society. Um, and compared to the other stories, this is very quiet, which is interesting. I mean, it's shows the journey of acceptance of self and where he come from, with Hawaii's family being openly supportive of Aquaman and his relationship. Um, Very celebratory of it, like "Yay, he's here, hooray!" which is very beautiful. But Jackson is the son of a Zebellian and the Atlantean Black Manta, the villain, which his mother didn't realize, and that's sort of like this story feels more like because it's very much using the superpowers as a metaphor for for sexuality, and I think it's like what happened was Jackson's mother uh hid him from Black Manta by bringing him into the middle of the desert, and that's the first part is all underwater. The second part is Jackson excuse me, bringing Hoea to the middle of the desert where he grew up in like Phoenix or wherever, which disconnected him from his powers. But it showed that his mother, what it's not that his mother was not protect doesn't love him for who he was, but was trying to protect him. And I believe that was kind of a metaphor.
Hmm.
Um, and it for his mother, for the love of a parent for a queer child, even if they aren't always able to express it in the way that makes sense. So it was a difficult story, but and which is kind of why I'm glad it was like a quiet story. There was no fighting, there was no battle. It was just this conversation between these two, ending with Jackson, under realizing no, his mother did love him, and he's going to love whoever he loves and be happy and be who he is.
Yeah.
So I thought it was a very sweet story.
It was almost like a Gus Van Sant kind of like My Private Idaho or something. I feel like kind of story, and also I'd say not just about protecting for like queer child, but also like for a multiracial child who is from two different
Mhm.
worlds and trying to navigate those two backgrounds at the same time.
Yeah, that's a great perspective. There were two comics that I wrote where like I think that these two were my favorite. It was Alicia Yo and this one.
Okay.
Number one, the art was gorgeous. Like we know
Mm,
when they're underwater, have like that really ethereal, blurred effect. And
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think what I connected with most in the story was almost as like I love that you like made mention that the powers were kind of like in parallel with his sexuality in a sort of way. And I think what I related to was having somebody in your life. In this case it was his partner who had a really supportive family, and my family is very supportive now, but I was closeted until like
Mm,
age of 19, and I saw people who were out to their parents and who would proudly like support their kid and buy them gay stuff. And it was almost like, oh wow, like that's nice. And it was like, I didn't have that. Now my family's much more accepting, but
that's great.
yeah, right. But seeing
Mm,
seeing that and like knowing that you just have the other side of that coin really hit. And having the mom move them all the way to the middle of the desert that's so disconnected. And even in the middle of the desert, I love that it's like sepia, it's dry, and then he finds water somehow. Like he finds it in like this cup and he's manipulating it. And I thought
mhm.
that was
Yeah.
quite gorgeous.
Yeah.
It broke my heart a little bit, but I'm glad that at the very end it was accepting of where you came from and loving and like having this like huevos rancheros in a diner and loving
Yeah.
where you come from.
Yeah.
It
For
tied
sure.
in very beautifully at the end.
And
So yeah,
also like it ending at a very like sort of like normative like 50s kind of place for families to hang out, like like an old-timey diner, being that place there where it is this this acceptance and this like celebration of queer love and coming out and all that.
Yeah.
absolutely.
And it's like one of the things, the messages were like, his mother built this tradition. They would always have brunch, and we can build our own traditions, and we can
Hmm.
and create and share that with the people we love.
For sure.
And that, and like you said, in this 50s
Yeah.
venue where
Tradition.
it's, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
All right. Well, that brings us to my favorite, Gumshoe and Green.
Ooh.
So the others are sweet and touching, but this is like got this noir vibe, cool concept of the enduring city. I knew of this Green Lantern Sojourner, but I hadn't read any of her stuff. So after reading this, I'm like, I gotta read this because it sounds really cool. So the enduring city is tied because I don't know how familiar you are with the Green Lantern Corps, but there's a spectrum of emotions. So there's the Green Lantern rings, which are like the good guys.
Yeah.
You got like willpower is green, and blue is love, I think, and purple is love. I don't know. They got like this path, but then there's the bad guy side, which is like yellow is fear and red is hate. So the city had no emotions. So they stripped themselves of emotions. Then they got released, and now everybody's getting a little freaky deaky up in here. Sojourner Mullen is a Green Lantern playing out their detective fantasies, and I think it's really fun. They acknowledge the inspirations off the top, like she literally dresses like Deckard from Blade Runner and says so.
Yeah.
And there she's her I guess receptionist is an AT-AT, which are hilarious. They're basically the DC Comics version of that alien race from Star Trek, where Darmok, when the walls fell, like speaking in metaphors, but um, instead of metaphors, they speak in memes. So like everything is a meme.
Like the 21st
Um,
century of speaking in metaphors.
yeah, yeah. It's like everybody like they just act out animated gifs kind of thing. So, um, but Sojourner's bisexual, and the way they frame it is like the private detectives. So many of their jobs are finding a cheating husband. So it's framed like, oh, she's hired to find a cheating husband by like a sexy plant lady who's that dame is trouble kind
Right.
of thing. But being bisexual, there's a lot of bi invisibility and assumptions around bisexuality,
Mm-hmm.
and this is, I thought it was nice how they spoke to that, because that couple were playing Sojourner. They wanted basically to have sex with her and eat her, and consume her, and just assumed because she's bisexual she would sort of fall into their trap,
Right.
because she's just gonna be willing and to just do whatever, and just Sojourner slaps them down, and then at the end it ends with her finding this missing person that she was in love with, and sitting and finding them in the diner and eating with them, and that's how it closes out. So I loved it. There's a lot of reasons why I love this one. Partially because of the style. It was like black and white with just the powers, the green of the Green Lantern powers being in color. So and then at the end, when she finds that person she loves, they're in color.
Mm.
So it's got this very artistic use of color that like highlights things. Um, the aliens look really interesting. Like you realize a lot of sci-fi and space is like, oh, an alien with a different forehead. Well, they looked alien,
Mm.
which I think is one of the great things about comics. But yeah, I mean, and it spoke to like there's a lot of assumptions around bisexuality, and it spoke to those assumptions in a very clear way, which I thought was really great.
I liked how I was just gonna say just quickly, yeah, I liked how one, like when I was reading it, like I can hear the soundtrack, like the boom 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 boom, like so I can hear like what music would be playing. And I think it's also, again, it shows, it's really cool because it shows, just this compilation shows like all the different genres that this pride, like that you can put like queer representation into, that it's not just like it doesn't, like it can be in all these different sort of genres and these different spaces, which I think is one of the overall accomplishments of this compilation.
Mhm.
I love that. I definitely agree. The style of really like not resonated. The style really worked for me. Especially because green is my favorite color. So
Yeah.
I love that green was the only color that you could see. Um, and the way that they played, like for me, I found like this was like, sort of the horniest like comic that we've
it
uh,
was definitely the horniest
Yeah.
comic.
but for a purpose, like definitely for a purpose. I think the twist really got me. I was like, oh no, like they know, because like the series of events where I was getting it, it was like, oh no, they know that they're investigating each other. Wait, oh okay, they wanted to. Wait, oh no, they want to have sex with her, but oh wait, no, they're gonna eat her. Ah,
Mm.
and then and then. It just showed that yeah, like our hero is smart, and yeah, we're gonna defy those bisexual stereotypes that Matt like clearly talked about. And at the end, finally seeing the world in color, and and I love that everybody kind of turns into a color, and the city turns back into color, and it's like the power that love has to I don't
Yeah.
know, illuminate the
Over.
world again.
Yeah, like the love overcoming that like cynical, that cynical noir, like cynicism that you see in a lot of like noir stuff. So I thought that was
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah.
great way to put that's absolutely a great way to put it. You know what? I think I liked this main character because she was very cynical, and
Mm.
then yeah, like love melts that away, and
Yeah.
hope yeah, that's what I like about that. Yeah, that's a good way to put it, Dan. I didn't think of
Nice.
it that
I like that. But and also, just I want to say before we move on to the next one, or anyone else has anything else to say,
Mhm.
that DC does write some really like horny plant ladies. Like there's something about these like sexual
way. Oh,
plant vegans, like
Yeah.
Poison Ivy, like has always been like one of the horniest of Batman's villains.
Yeah.
And even when like I've seen like bits from like the new Harley Quinn like show and stuff like that. So anyhow. Sexy
Yeah.
plant lady.
Oh, Harley Quinn, they just lean into the horniness.
Right.
Oh
Yes,
Yeah.
for
So
sure.
yeah. Um, well, that brings us to public displays of electromagnetism.
yeah.
So this is following Ray, which is a character I'm not really familiar with. Um, and he's using his powers to help build this training room when his partner uh, kisses him, and this sort of kicks off the struggle of expressing sexuality and how not everybody is as comfortable um, with that with expressions of affection. um, and I felt it was interesting because there's this larger battle between Ray, whose powers are light based, and this villain who's shadow based, but it's sort of reflecting on his past and trauma, which is why he represses sexuality
Mm.
being expressed publicly. Um, but it ends with him like making peace with that, and everybody understanding that this is a journey, like okay, we're okay to kiss here now in this moment in front of other people, and it's going to take time, because like and I mean this goes beyond queer people to everyone. Like not everybody's comfortable
Hmm.
with outright public displays of affection, um, for a variety of reasons, and that it's all about understanding and learning and growing. And I thought that was a nice message to include in here as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's a lot about consent in terms of like PDA in general. And like for I don't know, I guess growing up queer, I was always I don't know, and not like I was told, but I guess I never felt comfortable expressing myself in the way. You know what? It is sort of like you're told in a way because you hear stories about when you hold hands on the bus and people get followed home, or I don't know, people will like harass you on the TTC or something like that. Um, so like this story completely made sense to me, and to do it like for example like they're in sort of a workspace but they're also around their family, like their hero family. And I didn't know this character either, but by the end I understood kind of what he was carrying
Mm.
through what we see him deal with in this one.
For sure. It reminds me of, I remember when the music video for Beautiful by Christina Aguilera came out, and there's like
Mm.
two guys who are making out in that music video. And I remember like a friend of mine being like, "Oh, like that part is just so gross. Like I'm not against gay people, but like that part's gross or whatever." And then it's sort of like, realizing like, oh, like, sort of we're all clutching our pearls seeing, like queer love openly, or like queer PDA. Uh and again, I will say this is another one where I think it has a great, like Matt, like you touched upon how like the visual representation, like sort of the visual fight being very metaphorical for the internal struggle of PDA and being openly affectionate.
Yeah. So going from there, we are. I have to say, the DC world, they're very bi friendly,
Mm.
because we have special delivery, Tim Drake's first Pride with his boyfriend Bernard. And it's a very fun, silly. So like after some pretty heavy stories, this is sort of like getting back to the upbeat fun of the first story. So it's like him trying to get to the Pride Parade, and sort of coming to terms with his bisexuality, but then he's like stopped by Micro and Macro, who are two very Batman B list kind of characters. Like one can shrink, one's big and powerful, and they think, "Oh, what is this? A new bat weapon?" They're trying to get at it, and then they open it up, and it's like, huh? And then it's revealed at the end Tim baked a pride cake for Bernard,
Yeah.
and it was kind of wrecked because of this fight, but Bernard loved it. And it was just him coming to terms with himself and the struggles that he faces balancing these two lives, but just love. And that was nice. It's nice to see just this kindness and love in the story.
Yeah. And punctuated with like a really fun joke where it's like, "Oh, happy fur pry to you too," because the cake's like letters
Yeah.
get cut off.
Yeah.
It was so cool. It felt like the Hagrid, like, happy birthday, Harry cake that he gives.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah.
so gentle, but it was made out of love, and of course it got wrecked, but it's so cute. It was the first of a lot of Tim Drake ones that we get in this whole.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who I didn't realize was bisexual. I didn't know that about that character. So this was,
Yeah.
yeah, new
Um.
news to me. Cool.
Yeah. That's a fairly recent storyline. Because I think that's why they reprinted some stories and then bookended it with like a bunch of bat stories where they talk about it.
Hmm.
But yeah, it made up a big part of that. Because I mean that then goes into Bats in the Cradle, which is a fun play on the Yusuf Islam song.
Yeah.
And it's a tangent about, to show, allyship of the love that a parent has for a queer child. Kathy Kane, Batwoman,
Mm.
um, whose dad is a general, but she got kicked out of the military for not for refusing don't ask, don't tell, and he's in trouble and she saves him, but it's just these flashbacks and vignettes of love and respect that kind of a hard ass military guy still has for his daughter regardless. So that was sort of
Yeah.
kind of lovely as well. um yeah, yeah. So I guess, well, how did you both feel about these stories? So like they're kind of complementary in a way.
Ooh, okay, cool. Well, okay, starting with Tim Drake. It was especially because we were going to be seeing a lot of him, in this collection of stories. I think this was a beautiful one to start with because it really illustrated just how cute him and Bernard are, or Bernard are. I don't know. And the lengths that he went to, like he was, like, because he has it's I was trying to place him because I love Robin, and I was trying to place what this version of Tim Drake was in terms of like, okay, how Peter Parker nerdy is he, and how like much
Mm.
of a like Damien backbone does he have. I think he lives kind of in between the two of those two
Yeah.
things. Um, and to see that he just has like this cute blonde boyfriend was really sweet. I thought it was really really cute. And then moving into the next story, I liked that there's this really tough military. This is the one, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. Then like the really tough military man, but still has a love for his daughter. Um, it defies expectations of what we think, like big burly military men like that should accept, or usually accept, and it
Absolutely.
leads a really good example in my opinion. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what else to add other than for the Tim Drake one, I had a feeling like inside, like I didn't know if it was going to be a cake, but I figured it was like there was going to be a twist there, that it wasn't actually a weapon, that it was going to be some sort of, you know, expression of love or something personal. But it is still, you know, the reveal, I think, is still rewarding because of the acceptance that, like, it's more like, it's very much sort of like, oh, it's the thought that counts. I know. And it's, like you see that journey, like you said, of him trying to like fight off the villains while keeping the cake. And just, yeah, like it had like a lot of great humor to it, and having that, happy for Pry to you too, where it's like, oh, things didn't go as planned, but they ended where we wanted it to be, which I think is nice. And
Mhm.
similarly, like with the Kate's father, like, things didn't go as planned. Like he didn't necessarily plan to have, a queer child, but just being loving and supportive of her, and uh that it still ends where it needs to be, but it's just sort of a bit of a like a grittier, a darker story. um but it still ends in a place of love, and I think that's what makes them both powerful stories.
Oh.
Now, it wouldn't be a Pride comic without Harley and Ivy.
Yeah,
That's
more
when we get
horny plant ladies.
Oh,
Horny Plant Lady. And the horniest cosplay costume that was like every everyone was wearing in like
Yeah.
early aughts. Um, so we got the hunt. It is fun. It's got a more manga style, kind of clampy kawaii Western hybrid. Um, and arty Zoe Thorogood is the artist, and that's sort of like really that look is running through the entire comic. It's basically, it starts with them expressing their love for each other, but it then turns into them battling each other, but they're dark reflections of that, and it is kind of an interesting meditation on negative self-talk,
Mm.
because really what they are battling is their own manifestations, and we never get an explanation for it. But I mean, again, it's like 5, 6, 7, 8 pages. You can't really explore that too deeply. But it's like we all have those negative demons inside of us, and it's like ultimately it's the love of one another. When Ivy says, I love you, and Harley hears that, and it cuts through that negative self-talk, and they're able to defeat these demons. I mean, it's slightly arbitrary resolution, but again, there's only so many pages, and I think this is like the core of it is a really lovely story.
For sure.
Charo, how did you feel about this one?
I love myself some Poison Ivy and Harley Quinn. I cannot wait to one day have a couple's cosplay that they
Yeah.
Harley Quinn. Like that would be really sweet. But only I can only dream. What can I say? I like that when they were fighting their internal demons. Like Ivy was fighting like the classic Harley Quinn with like the pom poms and the big mallet, and then it was almost like Harley. Is this? I feel like this is a old classic Ivy design as well. That
Yeah,
Harley. Yeah, so that
yeah,
I like that aspect of it. But I think what I liked most was that I understand for some reason I understand Harley obviously has doubts. Like Harley is a character that has is going through in at least in my knowledge of a roller coaster of understanding who she is and self doubts and who should she be with and stuff like that. Whereas for Ivy to be having those doubts and to have that negative self talk seemed like something I hadn't seen before
Mm.
because she always seemed like this like powerful, always on top of and always ahead of everything else. So the one vulnerability of having like a version of Harley say that she didn't actually love her or something like was a really cool way to look at what really hides within Ivy, like Poison Ivy. So yeah, that's something that really resonated with me, and it was just cute. I
Yeah.
love you. I love you. Everything is saved. Kiss. Like that was. What can I say? I'm a sucker. Yeah. What do you think, Dan?
Yeah, what I was saying, yeah, like it's funny because it's very cute, but also has like this like S&M aspect to it a bit too, when she's like tied up and stuff like that, and with like the chase back and forth, but also yeah, it is very like the way like it's kind of like neat because between like watching now that I've started watching some of the like Harley Quinn show and then seeing Poison Ivy here, like it's very like humanizing of these villains. So it's not just like to show like a celebrating the love between two people who are like Batman villains, but also at the same time like Poison Ivy is someone who like she's never been like usually there's like a good reason like it's been like she's an environmental activist but just like goes around by like turning people into plants or something like that. So it is yeah, I don't know, it's just kind of cool to see these two characters humanized in such a loving way.
It's awesome.
and then we are into a different Earth. We travel to Earth 11 for Are You Ready for This? Earth 11, if you don't know, is the gender swapped Earth, where
Oh, I
everybody
didn't know
is the
that.
opposite gender. So you had like Wonder Man, and this is one of the Flash's sidekicks, graduating from sidekick to full blown hero. Just a little fun story about finding finding yourself and finding pride in yourself, um, but yeah, we get Wonder Boy, Girl Robin, who's got like some fun Wayne vibes going on. Supergirl instead of a Superboy, who's kind of punky, and it's a clearly like a Connor Kent kind of vibe there. Um, and also, like, it's pretty clear that Boy Raven and Wonder Boy have the hots for each other, even in the few
Mm.
panels that they share for each other with each other. But yeah, so the premise is um, this kid Flash is going to the Pride Parade, getting on the float, and there's like a relic of another superhero, and Glimmer, who's this very flamboyant supervillain, is trying to steal this weapon and or mask basically, and then this league of bad guys shows up, and all of the super teens get together and save the day, kind of thing. So, which is like, is I think this had the least to say, but it was kind of fun. It was there, and it was funny, and it was silly, and but it had some fun action.
Yeah, I think that I do also have the least to say about it.
Mm.
I think the villain's name is Shimmer.
Shimmer, that's right. Sorry, not
Yeah.
Glimmer.
No worries, no worries.
Yeah,
And while I have the least to say about it, I did like really love the characters. I love the character designs and like I don't even know if I really clocked that. Oh wow, like they're all gender bent. I was just like, oh yeah, in this world there's like a really cute like super girl, and like I didn't even clock that it was supposed to be gender bent. But I
Mm.
loved the character designs and I liked their attitudes. Like each of
yeah.
them had such a distinct personality. So while I don't have much to say about the story, the characters really stood out for this one.
Yeah, this one I felt almost just sort of like a fun like scene of yeah, they're sort of like showing like the gender swapped characters, which I was like some of them do. I didn't click that like all of them that was kind of the premise of the world, but it is a I think yeah, it's sort of like a fun expression and just sort of another yeah, sort of showcasing so to speak. But yeah, I didn't this one more washed over me just sort of to like enjoy as it happened. There wasn't like really much to reflect on afterward for me.
If there's a thing that can be, there's an Earth in the DC multiverse where it is. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's why Earth 11 is the everybody's the opposite gender Earth. This is actually a running comic now too. And it's like reading this, I was like, this was fun. I'd like to check that out. Like check
Mm.
this it's like the Earth 11 Teen Titans kind of thing. And I was like, that's feels like it was fun. It was
Yeah.
silly. It was good. But then, and I understand why they have this, because what's next? Ooh, ooh,
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mm.
Finding Batman.
And this
Um,
one might have been my favorite, but more just because like I grew up with Kevin Conroy
yeah,
as
yeah. Like
Batman.
I cried a lot.
Mm.
Yeah.
I read it out loud to feel his words.
Mm.
And I think, and I mean, I very much think that's why they had this very light thing before this. I think this is my favorite piece of writing and art
Same.
in this, because it's
Yeah.
autobiographical. Um, it's for the audience who haven't necessarily read it. Kevin Conroy was the voice of Batman. Mott Baum, the YouTuber, did a video called Kevin Conroy or sorry, about Kevin Conroy, called "The Gay Actor Who Brought Batman to Life, Kevin Conroy," and I highly recommend it.
Okay.
Um, what a lot of people don't realize is he went to Juilliard. He was roommates with Christopher Reeves, so Batman lived with Superman and
Whoa!
Robin Williams, who was originally going to be the Joker.
What?
And also as a
Yeah,
Robin.
and is a Robin. So Batman, Robin, and Superman all lived together when they were in university
Right.
taking acting classes.
Now I'm just gonna be thinking about how I wanted to see a Robin Williams Joker. That would have been so much fun.
Yeah, that would have.
Incredible.
But yeah, so he lived. This is his story, living through the AIDS epidemic, seeing his friends and loved ones die, hiding behind a mask to keep his career alive. Um, so like there's a word that's used in there, the F word,
Mm.
and when it's used, it hits like a hammer,
Yeah.
because the way it's being used is just so much. Um, there's so much weight behind it because when it was used, it was a career killer.
Yeah.
For him, it could have been.
And they use it,
But
I
then when
will
he,
say also, they use it in large, bold letters. So it is
yes,
very much sort of like in your face, you have to deal with it because this is how it felt, is what
Yeah.
I
yeah,
got from it. Like, this is what it would have been like, felt like to hear it from Kevin Conroy, like from his perspective.
It was like red too, like they completely it was
Mm,
the one colored thing in these black and white hand drawn issues, yeah.
yeah.
yeah,
And then when because what we learn through this story is that he was taking care of his brother who had mental health issues,
right.
and then when his brother uses it, it hits you. Like, it's one thing when the scummy actor said it or the scummy producer said it, but when his somebody who loves and who he cares for, but who's
Yeah.
going through mental health crisis used it, is like you could see in the art in the panel like how hard that hit him.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but then it closes with his audition, and how he found his voice, for Batman. Um, and so I'm just gonna read the closing lines here. It's
Yeah.
Yeah.
damn, like, it seemed to roar from 30 years of frustration, confusion, denial, love, yearning. Yearning for what? An anchor, a harbor, a sense of safety, a sense of identity. Yes, I can relate. Yes, this terrain I know well. I felt Batman rising from deep within.
Mm-hmm.
Shivers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, like shiver. Like this is like wow. In Paul Dini, a quote. Um, because when he passed away, a lot of people shared their feelings. As Batman, Kevin Conroy's voice spoke from a heart no stranger to pain. Through his empathy, Kevin's Dark Knight gave hope to anyone who needed a hero. He leaves behind a silent Gotham, but one infinitely blessed by his presence.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just like this was like is the fact that it's a true story, like in the midst of all of these like fictional tellings, which I'm sure many of them have a grain of a personal story in here, but this is just writ bold.
Yeah.
Really hits with me. It really hits hard.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think for me, I find it so interesting because uh there's so many like of these like sort of like ultra masculine characters, or like these, like sort of like the manly men fictional characters, and a lot of them have actually been played by gay performers. Like, you like Barney Stinson by Neil Patrick Harris, Batman by Kevin Conroy, who is like, I think no one would argue, like 99% of people, of Batman fans, would say that he is the quintessential Batman, more than any of the live action actors, even more than Will Arnett as Lego Batman. Like, he is the Batman. And so it's just, and like, when you even look back in like history, like Rock Hudson or other like, actors and people who would always be like sort of those like ultimate manly guys, like actually performed. There's even I lived in Denmark, and there's this guy Tor Linhart who is like considered to be like a suave young, manly guy as well, and he also is a gay man and openly gay actor. But even after he came out in Denmark, he still got these big, sort of like manly roles, or these like star-studded roles kind of thing. Um, but it is like I did not know this backstory until after Kevin Conroy had died, and didn't know the whole extent of it until after reading this, which was very powerful. And you can then see, how what he reached from within to get that amazing gamut of emotion out of Batman, who's like probably the best cartoon superhero voice actor, I would say, Kevin Conroy.
Hmm.
Yeah. For me, I loved that this reminded me of why it's important as a queer person to know your history and to understand how much how privileged I am, especially as a queer actor in Toronto. Because being gay isn't a career killer anymore. I mean, like, of course, there's the issue of like being typecasted. Like, yeah, a lot of the roles that I audition for are depressed gay teens,
Mm.
but at least they want depressed gay teens on television, and it's not like they're afraid, or it's not like I have to worry for my own financial stability because because I am. It's also like, I mean, the time this took place, understanding things like the AIDS epidemic and knowing your queer history is important, and especially as a young queer person, it's something that I try to make a point of knowing, and that's why this really did resonate. Um, so yeah, it was a really really good one. This one.
Well, you continue in the Bat family. Back to the fictional world, though, with the Tim Drake special, which this is when we are actually. Is it Bernard or Bernard? I'm not sure.
I think if you're British, it's Bernard, but if
If
I
you're
think
British, it's
Bernard.
Bernard. If it's
Bernard.
we're Bernard. But it's
Bernard.
Tim, and it's his journey, um, where his first kind of date, and he's like wearing Dick's hand me downs, where he's like, "How can somebody have his shoulders this darn broad?" kind of thing, and it's just funny. Um, but yeah, it's he doesn't even realize that's one of the things that I kind of liked about this. Like, it's just something he didn't realize he was on a date, but it's like it's him figuring that out, and then because I mean he was dating spoiler, and we through this series of stories we see him defeat a cult who was preying on young teens and their vulnerability and their pains. We then see him defeat like a ghost elephant that was made by
yeah.
uh magic and Tesla or something like that. And no, Thomas Edison, excuse me, it was Thomas Edison. But yeah, and in that story he's coming to terms, and again it really feels like, oh, the Bat family are there for one another, and they love each other, and they want to, but they also, even the bat, there's one issue where Batman is like, okay, you're happy, I'm happy. And that's basically
Yeah.
the extent of the emotional journey for Batman. But it ends, with his ex Stephanie slash spoiler, just giving Bernard a big hug and going, yay. So it's got like this fun journey, but it shows us no journey is the same, and it's not necessarily going to be easy, and that the people you think are going to be hard aren't always hard, like just you gotta go with the flow. So I thought it was kind of a nice way to explore Tim's journey through these issues.
Yeah. And I think like one part that's very telling is like later, like there's a part where Batman says, like, why call us? Why not call the police? And it's like, well, they need someone who will help them, not someone who will shoot them. And it also like shows how like in this case it's like, well, the actual like legal system is failing us or isn't properly protecting us. So that's why we're reaching out to, you instead, reaching outside of the lines for someone who
Yeah.
will actually care for us, because the system is failing us and does not care about us.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting the Tim Drake, like the gear shift into it, and then they just kept going until the very end. But it was very nice to get to understand the whole Bat family in a way that I hadn't before. Um, and yeah, like that Batman is hardened, but still cares, and the care that Robin has for everyone, and meeting Stephanie, and having him kind of like talk to her about what happened between them, and why, and what that meant for him in his own personal journey. It was all really well constructed, very very well constructed, and yeah. And then there's obviously a lot of really awesome art at the very end of the book as well. But that's what I like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing I noticed, like even in their civvies, the Bat family wear their colors though. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
spoiler, purple and black, and like
Yeah.
it's like, guys, vary it up a bit. I mean,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. You know,
Nightwing is blue and black. I'm like, guy, you moved from Gotham to Bloodhaven, and all of a sudden Nightwing is there. You got to vary it up a bit. People are going to figure this out. So, but yeah. Well, So that was the Pride issue. The 2024 issue dropped today. I haven't read it,
Nice.
so I'll have to give that a read. But how did you feel about this collection?
I'm happy that something like it exists. Which I said at the very beginning, but there's so much meaning and so much charm in these characters. It gave me a new appreciation for each of them, and to understand also the diversity of not just hearing a bunch of cis, het, and white stories.
Mhm.
And the diversity that lived within, like, and the intersectionalities that each of them were living within. Um, the different spectra of identities they covered was lovely. I know I really 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 loved it. I'm very happy it exists.
Whereas
How about
I don't like my cishet white vision of the world being challenged so harshly like this. No, no, I mean, I thought it was great. I always find Kumail Nanjiani once said, he's like, he grew up just relating to, the white superheroes or the white characters, and then just seeing someone else who looked like him, he was like, oh, like I can still, relate to them just the way I relate to the others. And so, characters like Alicia and Up at Bat and some of the others, I find very relatable and very grounded in, because it's usually through the personalities that I find I relate to characters. And so, and I also love, as someone who loves sci-fi, where you get to see different worlds and stuff like that. Similarly, even just seeing different worlds that are, not my personal community, but communities, I've entered sometimes, whether it's, going to Pride Parade or, hanging out with friends at their, queer focused parties, or just, reading a story that takes place in a community that is new to me, is just the same kind of sort of thrill, because it is seeing these other expressions and these other people's experiences. I find it very engaging, and there's, uses humor that I really liked. It uses, the backstory of my favorite 90s superhero cartoon and stuff like that. So it's great to, get wrapped up and get drawn into all of that as well. I think it's really well done. I didn't know that they did a monthly Pride issue, which is really cool, or a annual Pride issue, which I think is really cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I really loved it too. So yeah, I'm glad we got some time to talk about it and to launch our Pride Month with this story. So excellent. All right. Well, you've been listening to Detecting the Marvelous, Excelsior, or I guess Up and Away. This was
Yeah, this
so
is
there we go.
Up and Away.
Yeah. You've been listening to Detecting the Marvelous, a Far From Here and ShowbizMonkeys.com co-production. Your producers are Dan Rosen, Matt Erdill, and Shahara Ghaznavi. Music by Glenn Bouchamp, and art by Ben Steamroller. Thanks for listening, and remember, true believers, Excelsior!